Well, in the standard group, the one that was just eating the same amount each and every day, a lot of them died. 13 of them died. They stayed an average of 219 days in the hospital. But the other group, just by changing that timing and how many calories they ate one day versus the other, only stayed in the hospital 123 days. And he had 6 versus 13 deaths. I had the opportunity to be at the Personalized Life Extension Conference 3 years ago. One of my friends, a speaker there, Patrick Friedman, was also talking about intermittent fasting. And he said, hey guys, let me ask you, what's your favorite theory of aging? Are we talking inflammation? Are we talking free radicals, insulin sensitivity? No matter what your favorite theory of aging is, intermittent fasting helps with that. And it seems true. Whether we look at the markers on inflammation, like the TNF-alpha scores, if we look at the amount of free radicals that are being created, the amount of oxidative stress, fancy terms, but simply it means pretty much when we look at the biomarkers. Skylar Tanner was talking about this yesterday. Intermittent fasting helps in all those. We look at things like, say, HDL measurements, your good cholesterol. HDL ends up improving with intermittent fasting. Look at stuff with triglycerides. 3 weeks of intermittent fasting on men, the triglycerides plummeted. A lot of benefits for not that much work. Same thing when we start looking at SIRT1 receptors. Let me just quote Brad Pylon. He wrote, Eat, Stop, Eat. He says that if intermittent fasting was a pill, then Seller would make $1 billion and win a Nobel Prize. And frankly, it's just that good. So why don't we hear about it? Well, a lot of the times, let's think about it. How much money can I make selling you guys this magic, wonderful concept that, guess what, you don't have to eat as often? On the other hand, if I tell you and I sell you on this story that, well, guess what, you need to be eating every couple of hours, otherwise you're going to lose muscle mass, I get to sell you all sorts of stuff. I get to sell you meal replacement powders, I get to sell you protein, I get to sell you little boxes to carry your food in your lean protein and chicken breast. And the thing is, it's not just from an anti-aging perspective, because I'll admit, that's my bias, but it's fantastic from the body composition standpoint. Intermittent fasting, particularly when you start getting the diet dialed in a little, is one of the best ways to really shred your body for that extra bit of fat loss. We heard it yesterday. Abs are not built in the gym. Abs are built in the kitchen. And it's particularly true. So let's talk a little bit about some more of the details. How do you get started? Some of the regimens. The two that I hear about the most are the Eat, Stop, Eat protocol and Martin Berkham and Lean Gains. Eat, Stop, Eat, it's pretty simple. You eat, you stop, you eat. He's usually advocating about a 24-hour period. And that doesn't mean that you wake up in the morning and don't eat all day. Rather, and I personally do this way all the time, it's basically I'll have a big dinner, wake up, not eat throughout most of the day, and then have another big dinner. That's now 24 hours of not eating. Lean Gains ends up advocating more of a 16-hour fasting window and 8 hours of feeding. The difference really starts being a question of what your goals are. In case your goals are predominantly like, hey, I want to build more muscle and bulk up, I'd say more of a shorter feeding window like a Lean Gains protocol would work out great. If you're looking more from an anti-aging perspective, I'd advocate up to about 36 hours, so a day and a half of not eating. So how do we get started? We've heard other speakers mention diet briefly. I end up telling people low-carb paleo. Let me repeat that again. It's low-carb paleo-style diet. And that low-carb is really important. And here's why. The thing is, if you don't end up eating low-carb, let's take a look at what would happen in your body when you end up eating a meal. You eat a meal, you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, say a bunch of protein. Internally in your body, your glucose starts going up. Ultimately, your body wants to maintain pretty tight control over glucose levels. So it ends up releasing a hormone called insulin, which starts taking this glucose, starts trying to store it. It's basically a storage and growth hormone. So it takes this glucose, assuming your muscle glycogen stores aren't depleted, you didn't just work out, and starts trying to store it. So now your insulin levels are raised. Guess what? When your insulin levels are raised, your body isn't going to be burning its natural fat reserves. It doesn't have any way to do that. So what happens? You had this meal, you had your lunch, and a couple hours later you're looking around and all of your coworkers, their energy levels are crashing, they're miserable. Don't do it that way. This is why I end up advocating a low-carb approach. When you end up eating low-carb enough, your body's mostly staying in a state of ketosis. In essence, your body's burning fat for its energy, not for carbohydrates. And now it means you can go so much longer without eating because your body's using what it should be using for its energy sources. It's fat.